Here I am, there you are, here we are to celebrate the life of one of the most exquisitely wonderful, wonderfully talented, beautiful persons, people, man who ever walked on the planet.
Everyone knew Steve as a great musician, and I was lucky to have had many treasured musical adventures with him too. But I also knew him as something not many others were aware of: college football fanatic. I say fanatic because for 19 seasons, from 1996 right through last fall, Steve and I were a part of a college football prediction game called the Picks. Every week from late August right through the bowls, all the players, called Picksters, would try to predict the winner of every single major college football game, sometimes as many as 50 games a week, against the betting point spread. No money involved, we just played for a traveling trophy awarded to the most accurate pickster at the end of each season. Now, Steve never won the trophy, but he was the winner of many individual weeks over the years, and the winner was always celebrated in a headline on the weekly newsletter, usually with a terrible pun or a play on words involving the winner's name. Steve loved winning and seeing his name, and loved giving me a hard time for coming up with headlines that evoked a groan. But the remarkable thing was, Steve never missed turning in his weekly picks for that entire time. Over 300 separate entries over 19 years, and most of that pre-email, when he had to find a fax machine to get his picks in from wherever he might be. I remember him faxing from South Africa one week. But am I surprised that he is the only pickster out of all the dozens who participated who never missed a week? Not in the least.
Our story begins way back in 1977 at the Fred Waring Workshop in East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. And he convinced me that I should maybe come to Indiana University and audition. He thought I had an operatic voice. Well, far be it from me to argue with Steve Zegree. Steve and I drove back all night one night. He was driving. I was drinking, as I recall. I had a few beers, and I was always of the mind that you had to drink a few beers when you drove so you could face the traffic with confidence, but Steve didn't see it that way, so he drove. So anyway, we rolled in about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning in Bloomington from East Stroudsburg. And I had to sing an audition at 9 o'clock, and he played for me. And it was for the esteemed teacher and Wagnerian soprano, Margaret Harshaw. And I will never forget what she said to me. She said, I sang Danny Boy, by the way, in the key of F with a high A at 9 o'clock in the morning, kind of probably smelling like a brewery, which I think she caught whiff of. And she said, well, that was okay, but you sound like a saloon singer. Well, that didn't offend me. And I think you're a tenor, and that kind of offended me a little bit, but not much. But then she told me I sounded like Joe Feeney, and then that really offended me, because Joe Feeney at the time was the Irish tenor for Lawrence Welk, and I thought, how dare this woman? So I said something probably really inappropriate, which I won't say now, but I offended her. I walked out the door, and Steve came up to me, and he says, you have no idea what you just did there. I said, no, I probably don't, but you know what? I just really don't care. But she told me that I wouldn't sing opera. That's what she said. I went, well, I'll show her. So, in essence, Steve and Margaret Harshaw both did me a great favor, because they ticked me off to the point where I decided I was going to prove them wrong. And Steve stayed with me the entire time. He was my accompanist and my friend, and that was the beginning of an almost 40-year musical relationship.
I first met Steve Zegree during the Clash of the Choirs competition. We were paired together during that competition. I remember thinking to myself, I need to audition this guy to make sure he's the right fit for Team Cincinnati. What I figured out later down the line, unbeknownst to me at the time, is that I was actually the one auditioning for Steve. He had to make sure that I was worthy of being paired with him. As it turned out, it was a great partnership. We ended up winning Clash of the Choirs. It was a great source of pride for not only myself, but for the entire community of Cincinnati. A community that Steve, I think, kind of adopted as a little bit of his hometown after that. But even though he had a real affinity, affection for Cincinnati, he was never shy about reminding me when his beloved San Francisco Giants would take it to my Reds, which they did quite a few seasons in a row there. He was never shy about letting me hear about that.
Steve Zegree always had a thing for the joke and the good times. I was once on a break from a tour with the real group, and then Steve said, I have a place for you. And I came to Western Michigan University, and he had a dormitory for me. Lovely place, lovely times. I wrote the lyrics to this song in that dormitory. One summer, long...
I heard the Amazing Gold Company on numerous occasions, and Steve was very persistent about getting me to write an arrangement for them. So I arranged the classic Vernon Duke song Autumn in New York for the group a cappella. He later told me that it was one of the hardest things they had ever attempted, and, classic Steve, he was such a perfectionist that he made each of the 16 singers come one by one to his office and sing their parts alone and from memory.
We did countless gigs together, we did a recording together, we hung out together. I used to beat him up playing one-on-one basketball. He thought he was pretty good. He was terrible, by the way. The only thing he was quick.
I'm representing my partners in the Manhattan Transfer and saying that we're so sorry we can't be in Kalamazoo this weekend. And I knew I could count on him 1,000% to make gigs happen out of nowhere and to give me feedback for projects and always have a great positive attitude and relentless energy. He gave me this, by the way. He was trying to tell me I had a big mouth or something.
Hi, I'm very happy to be with you for this ceremony in the memory of Steve. I can't be with you in the United States, but this is my testimony. Steve came in my home in Spain to edit the new CD of my choir, Hodier, and after 4 days of very hard work with the sound engineer, we decided it was over and finished, and that the next day would be for swimming pool. And Steve woke up at 4 in the morning, listened everything while we were sleeping, and find another 100 cuts to do in this CD. So the sound engineer was not so happy. That was Steve. He was tireless working for the best of the music and the best of the art.
For nearly 30 years, my colleague, bandmate, soulmate, touring and recording partner, 4 continents, 6 CDs. The richness of experiences and the vastness of the memories, well, like the song says, I could write a book. There are a few from over the years that still carry a glow that is not dimmed at all. The violin playoff between your dad and Renata at your Cloisters condo, which may or may not have included a copious amount of Poland's national beverage. Being rushed by the crowd after a performance on the steps of the National Museum in Recife, Brazil. Jogging the length of the iconic wavy Copacabana promenade with you. Impossibly reducing the phone book size instrumental score to West Side Story for the Western Jazz Quartet to present the African premiere of this work, and working with your dear sister Joan to provide a surprise birthday party for you in Mozambique in 2012. You can't make this stuff up. Finally, I wanted to share that on so many occasions, sometimes after our greatest achievements, and just as often and more poignantly after our biggest challenges, I can still hear you say, if I could do it all over again, I wouldn't do anything differently. That is a life fulfilled.
Hello, this is a picture of Steve Zegree and me, Barry Ross, the violinist, and bass player Larry Hutchinson. And we're posing for a publicity picture for our trio, Jazz on a String. And we did quite a bit of gigging together in the late 70s and early 80s. But what's so great about this picture is Steve really hated to wear hats, whereas I always loved hats, and I wear them year-round. He wouldn't even wear them in the coldest Michigan winters. When Steve published his Gershwin tune, They Can't Take That Away From Me, he dedicated it to my wife Jane and myself. And the words are, the way you wear your hat. Thanks, Steve.